Hello and welcome to episode number 45 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is June 26, 2017. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both at McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/45. So I don't think I really have any intro things to talk about, so let's send it to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our topic for this podcast.
Thank you, Rollo, and thank you, everyone, for listening this week. Thanks for your time. Last week, we kind of had a little inside baseball type thing talking about the infighting or debating or arguing in the libertarian community over the borders and whether we should have open borders or closed borders, or are you a communist or are they police status? We're kind of stepping back from that a little bit and going back to our listeners who are not libertarian, or maybe you are libertarian, and you'll find it compelling or find it interesting. We're going to talk about the non-aggression principle. And the reason we wanted to do this is because I remember when I was first learning about libertarianism, the non-aggression principle sounded really cool. And Rollo will go into this a little more on what we mean by non-aggression principle, but it sounded really cool, and it sounded like something I wanted to learn a lot about. And then you start hearing people poke holes in it, and some libertarians say, no, the non-aggression principle can never be violated, and others say, sure, you can violate it sometimes, but it's a good guide. And there's others who don't care about it at all, but it is a topic of conversation in the libertarian community. So that's what today's episode is about. Rollo, what exactly is the non-aggression principle?
The non-aggression principle is that it is wrong to commit violence or threaten violence against peaceful individuals. So if someone's not hurting you or trying to cause harm to you, then you can't hurt them or steal their stuff. It's very simple. It's kind of a rewriting of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right. So if you don't initiate, or if you don't invite the force or consent to the force, then you should not have your rights violated.
Correct.
Sounds pretty simple and straightforward. Who would be against that? So if I talk to my Democrat friends and say, well, I'm just against the initiation of force against innocent people, I know what their answer is because I've gotten it several times. Yeah, me too. So Why are they wrong? I've actually heard them say, yeah, well, everyone's against that. It sounds great in theory, or something along those lines. Like, of course, who would be in favor of violence against innocent people? So why are statists, Democrats, Republicans, whatever, would you say they're wrong when they say they're against violence against innocent people?
Yes and no. They think that they're against violence against innocent people, but they don't see what the state does as violence. So they don't see taxation as theft. They, come up with these ideas of like the social contract theory and whatnot, and say, no, that's the price you pay for living in a civilized society, or, you can always leave. They've got a million excuses for it, but they just don't see that as violence. They don't see it as theft. So in their minds, they're within the confines of the non-aggression principle, because no one, or at least unless you're like a violent sociopath, no one goes around saying like, oh yeah, I want to hurt this person. I want to commit violence against them. No one actually thinks that. So whether it's just ignorance, and I don't mean that in a way to degrade anyone, calling them ignorant. It's just a state of lack of knowledge.
Means they don't know. Yeah.
Right. Or whether there's cognitive dissonance. I think that most people have good intentions, but just are incorrect.
So then what would you say? We're kind of jumping right away from them, because I would say, actually, no, you are in favor of violence against innocent people, because you do advocate for the state. And when we point out to you what the state is doing, you deny it. So yeah, I would say those people are actually saying, I'm usually, or I think most of the time, I'm against violence against innocent people, except for when I want something or I think something should be done, then violence is acceptable, because they almost always, even after you point out what the state is doing and they agree, they'll still say they're in favor of it. They don't suddenly turn around and say, well, I don't think we should fund schools that way because it's very violent. So I actually do think, I think we can get them to come around because it is a good idea. And I think when you first say it to someone, it sounds really good. And I think they want to be there, but I don't think most people actually are, at least today. That's my side point. But I don't think you're wrong the way you explain it. I don't think they realize it's violence, but the fact that they do advocate for the state means that they are, in fact, in favor of violence against innocent people. So if you are one of those people, you should reconsider your stance. But anyway, on to the next point. There are some libertarians who take the non-aggression principle as very strict. Basically, you can never violate someone's property without permission. I would say that's wrong. Rallo, what do you think? Do I need a sign on my front lawn that says you may walk up my path and knock on my door if you would like to speak to me? Otherwise, it's a violation of my property and I can shoot you.
Yeah. No, I agree that I don't hold the non-aggression principle as axiomatic. I think there's certain times where it can be justly violated. I like to take the Michael Huemer approach, which he kind of describes in the beginning of his book, The Problem of Political Authority, where he says that, and this is kind of, I hold this as my axiom, what I'm about to say, and I haven't come across any scenarios where this would be untrue. But the Michael Huemer idea for if you're going to have an axiom for how you build up your philosophy is that people have the prima facie right to live free from harmful coercion. So it's very similar to the non-aggression principle, but it leaves kind of some wiggle room there as if there's a greater evil or harm that's going to happen by not violating the non-aggression principle, then you should violate the non-aggression principle. And
that opens you up to some criticism here. So maybe. First of all, what do you mean by prima facie?
So at first, kind of prima facie means kind of at first glance. So,
right. So without more information, without knowing what's going on, people
you have to have
should not be aggressed upon.
You have to have a really good reason why you would violate it, which is really kind of a normal, and that's the beauty of Michael Huemer's philosophy and the way he goes about it is because he just takes very commonly held views and beliefs that it's that we're not taking.
It's kind of ethical intuitionism.
Exactly.
But what I want to say to that, where you said that people should not have their rights violated unless there's a really good reason. Well, I could imagine someone coming back and saying, well, don't you think half the country starving to death is a good reason? Or, the bottom 10% not being able to be educated. Don't you think that's a good reason? Because you have plenty of money. If I take $3,000 from you, you're not really going to hurt that bad. But someone could really benefit from that $3,000 going to school or eating for the week. That seems to me like a reasonable, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm playing devil's advocate, and I could see someone saying that seems like a reasonable use of violence.
Well, you have to take a look at each of these objections and realize whether or not they're true. To say that half the country is starving to death, which country? The United States? That's simply not true. And I know you're not saying that, but there are some people who say, oh, we've got people
I've gotten these arguments.
And there's not. I mean, really, the only people that are starving to death in the United States are people who are being starved as a way to murder them. People aren't dying on the streets because of starvation. It just simply does not happen. There might be, malnutrition, but it's not causing people to die. So
yeah, it's certainly not a widespread problem, even amongst the homeless.
Right. You can't have a made-up reason to violate the non-aggression principle. So to say that we need to violate the non-aggression principle to feed people in the United States or else they're going to starve to death is like saying we need to violate the non-aggression principle because the grass is blue. It's not true. So that can't be a valid reason to violate the non-aggression principle.
Do you think it matters how much force you use?
Yes.
So, for example, what's something the government funds that seems pretty trivial? I don't know, the National Endowment of Arts that's been in the news. Did they cut that? Is that still around?
I don't know.
Whatever. Any program that seems kind of pointless. There's countless ones. But the force they use to get that money is death. That's the threat.
Right.
You will die unless you give this money to me so I can put it to whatever I want to put it to. To me, that force seems a little excessive. And if you're going to be allowed to use force, it should be proportional or acceptable. Or
well, let's
for example.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say if I'm walking down the street and you bump me, most normal people wouldn't say it's within my right to shoot you in the head.
Right.
That seems a little ridiculous in a lot of force. Yeah,
that's where I wanted to go with it. There was what I remember it was a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know how long ago it was, but one of the quote unquote libertarians, he who will not be named people, they asked him if I think it was like, is it a violation? All right, so it's a violation of the non-aggression principle to steal a paperclip from someone. He said yes. Is it a violation to kill that person for stealing the paperclip from you? And he said, no, it's not. The person said, oh, look, he's saying that you can, kill someone. Well, one, I don't think that person was necessarily saying that would be justified. And two, I think the mistake that he was making is that to ask what retaliation is justified is not part of the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is not a prescription for retaliation. And I think that's where a lot of even libertarians get confused. You need to use some other principle, some other idea to come up with what should be how a violation of the non-aggression principle should be handled. Normally, it's like a proportionality kind of thing. Like, hey, if you steal $5 from me, then it makes sense that you owe me $5. But
plus a little extra for the trouble.
Sure. But it doesn't make sense to say if you steal $5 from me, then I get to shoot you in the face.
Or pay $1 million or whatever.
Right.
Whatever kind of excessive force is there. And so basically the state is backing everything up with a death threat. Ultimately. I mean.
Yeah, they are.
Do you disagree?
No, I completely agree. So that kind of shows that they're in some sort of not good ethical position, that if you commit the most, minor of transgressions against them, that they're saying that they can kill you for it. Doesn't make sense. That would be like, if it makes sense for them to do that, then it would make sense for me to say, if you ride my tractor without my permission, I get to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But
what if you told them that? What if you had a sign on your property that says "Ride my tractor and I kill you"?
I still don't think. Yeah, I still don't think you'd be justified in doing that, because it's, would it be stupid to go try to ride my tractor if I, was threatening
just to test it?
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make it right or acceptable,
yeah.
Right.
Right.
But I also think
I could say that, if I see you breathing, I get to kill you. Well, that's absurd too. I mean, that's absurd. So there has to be some sort of, there needs to be something more than a non-aggression principle. And I think proportionality is a good one of those tools, or whatever you want to call it, to try to deal with these issues.
Well, I remember a little while back, I sent you a video I found on YouTube, and I can't remember who did it, but it was called Debunking Libertarianism in a Minute or something.
Oh, I'm sure they nailed it.
Oh, they killed it. So they talked about somebody drowning, and there's a rope, but the rope, you're walking by and there's a house and there's a rope hanging down from the house or something. And if you take that rope and throw it in the water, you can pull the drowning child to the shore and save them. But since that would violate the non-aggression principle, libertarianism is now debunked because you are not, this is what the video is saying, you are not allowed to take that rope. So, what are your thoughts on it, on that scenario? And is that really a dagger for libertarianism, being you're not allowed to steal that rope to save a child because that would violate someone's rights?
Yeah, I mean, they got us there. It's the real dagger because obviously you should take the rope, and that means that you can also take a lot of money from that person's paycheck every week and pay for all sorts of stupid government programs in addition to it. So no, I mean, it's any one of those lifeboats. There's a bajillion lifeboat scenarios that are out there, and that being a perfectly legitimate one. I mean, you know, it makes sense. If you see, you know, take the literal example, you see someone drowning and there's a lifesaver or a rope or something that's at someone's house, you're not typically allowed to just take it, but you're trying to prevent a greater harm or evil from occurring. So I think it makes a lot of logical sense to take it from them. Now, presumably, you're not going to use it to save the life and then take it for yourself. You would return it. So there's really not that much harm. So in order to objectively prevent a huge amount of harm, I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
Well,
when you're really committing very little harm. And that doesn't mean because you're allowed to violate the non-aggression principle in that very specific scenario. Now, to take a step back for a second, if you had a rope, if you were walking around with a rope and you just didn't want it to get wet, and then you decided to take someone else's rope to do it, then that's not right. You should just use your own rope. So it's only in that very specific scenario that you really have no other options, because what it is, these lifeboat scenarios, they're setting you up in a way that the only way that you can normally save a life is if you steal something from someone. Well, yeah, I mean, it makes.
Well, let's talk about what society would look like in a libertarian world. So it's a clear violation of the NAP, the non-aggression principle. Clearly, that's someone else's rope and you took it. Mm-hmm. So, okay, but there's a difference between what we would talk about the law, which I think the non-aggression principle is a good foundation, at least a guiding principle for the law, which would, of course, when I say law, I don't talk about the laws we have today, but kind of the social laws, common law. And morals and doing what's morally right. And I think there would be very few judges in society. So say the homeowner says, hey, that guy stole my rope. That was my good rope. It's an old rope that has never been wet, and I had planned on never getting it wet, and he threw it in the water, and now it's worthless because it got wet. I don't know why that would be the case, but in theory, let's say. And so he wants to sue the guy. Well, maybe it was a historic rope and now it's ruined because it got wet. And then maybe the person who took it or the person whose life was saved, I'm sure they would be very thankful that their life was saved. If somehow a judge decided that it was a violation or a wrong and he would have to pay the guy, I just can't imagine too many people really saying like, my rope was more valuable than that person's life. I don't see many judges deciding that. I don't even see too many people wanting to press charges against the person who took the rope to save the child. But in theory, they could because there was a violation there.
Right. And I even remember, just as kind of a parallel to this, I remember being in theology class in high school. And not that we have to, justify everything with, religious ideas, but talking about, if your kid was about to starve to death, was it okay to steal a loaf of bread to prevent your kid from starving? And the way it was explained in my class was, yeah, you do that because if the bread owner really understood the situation, you would probably be willing to give it to you. Which kind of makes sense. And even say if the owner of the bread didn't want to give it to you, you still Still kind of makes sense to do it. But again, these are very, let's not lose sight of the fact that these are very specific situations that are meant. The whole idea of a lifeboat scenario is to break the non-aggression principle. So,
and it's a very rare situation that would almost never come up in the real world.
Whoop-de-doo, you found this, you found this extremely rare, unlikely situation where you broke the non-aggression principle. What does that prove? It proves in that extremely specific scenario that it's okay to violate the non-aggression principle. So take a literal lifeboat. I think there's scenario.
Also
take the literal lifeboat scenario. You're on say Slappy and I are on a boat, and it springs a leak, and the only way for both of us to survive is if we both bail the water out. Well, I decide that I want to pray to Poseidon to save us and not bail water. Does Slappy have the right to, or the justification to threaten me with violence if I don't bail water? And I would say yes. Because if I don't bail water with him, then we're both going to die, and it's not a good outcome. It's a much worse outcome than me getting beat up. That doesn't justify Slappy, in the words of Michael Huemer, to force me to make him a ham sandwich. It doesn't justify Slappy to then form a government to tax me and take 40% of my income and dictate how I can, live my life and all these other things, and, form a military that goes overseas and starts bombing other countries.
Right. So it's a very specific threat,
right,
and a specific situation. So just the fact that we were on the boat and I'm able to force you to bail water doesn't mean I can force you for the rest of my life to do whatever I say and fund whatever projects I want you to fund.
Right.
It's only in that specific instance that I'm allowed to force you. And once the boat's bailed out and once we get to land and we're free, that obligation and my right, or my legit, what's the word I'm looking for? My ability to force you to do something is now gone.
Right. So it's funny that people think that if they show a situation where the non-aggression principle really doesn't apply or doesn't work, that they say, there you go, therefore government. I mean, that's completely illogical.
Now all force is justified for whatever project I want to do. Because in a very specific instance, and I don't really think it's a hang-up for most libertarians, but for those of you who are listening who aren't there, it gives you something to think about.
Right.
Anything more to add?
I
mean, we could go through all kinds of scenarios.
How about preemptive strikes? What do we say about that?
Sure, because that is one thing that we hear a lot. We'll hear people say, in libertarian world, you have to wait until the bullet's touching the guy's skin before you can return fire. What do you say to that?
Well, fortunately,
what do you think about a preemptive strike?
Yeah, fortunately, the non-aggression principle, in its own definition, doesn't just cover the act of violence, but it also covers threats of violence. So if Slappy's threatening to punch me in the face, if I, wear a blue shirt tomorrow, then that's a violation of the non-aggression principle, and I would be justified in some sort of preventative measures to make sure that I don't have my rights violated. So it just comes to figuring out what is an actual legitimate threat.
Right. And again, we talk about a free society every now and then in this podcast, but I believe, we don't know what it would look like, but I believe there would be judges, arbitrators who could decide that. And I could say, this guy Rollo every day is telling people he's going to kill me. And, my friend saw him at the gun store yesterday, and he posted on Twitter, "I'm going to kill Slappy Jones too." We need to stop him. We need to do something. I think most security forces, most judges will be like, yeah, this guy, he's got to be stopped. This is a clear threat. We can't have this in society.
Sure.
So I think I would have a right to stop you. Now, you can't just decide that the fact that you're standing where you're standing, that you are now, using violence or threatening violence against me, because by you existing, you're threatening violence against me because I can't walk right through you. I can't punch you in the face. As you walk around. I mean, that is an argument, and it's kind of silly because there is a state of nature. And
the funny thing is, this is intuitive to basically every single person. So when people try to break it with these, what if, like the example you just gave, like, oh, you're violating my rights by standing where you're standing. No one tries to walk through people. I mean, it's absurd to even think that.
Right, but it's also, you can't get around that. The fact that we're alive, the fact that we exist, we take up space. So you have to have a starting point.
Nature is aggressing against me.
Right, exactly. So it's a way that we think best allocates the scarce resources we have would be to follow the non-aggression principle.
Right, within reason. Let's give that caveat in case it wasn't already obvious.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't mean it can never be violated. It's just a prima facie argument.
Yeah, and I think it's for the kind of huge, or the whatever you want to say, how far you got to go to try to break it. You know what? I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's an axiom, but I think it's a pretty good guideline to go by. So,
and it helps you think about these situations a little more. You can always sit there and think, well, who is being aggressed?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the aggressor and who is being aggressed? And usually the answer is the aggressor was wrong. And I think most people agree with that when you break down these situations and talk about it. Like if you substitute anything the government does for an individual or a person or a group of people, almost everyone, even if you're a Republican or a Democrat, would agree that that's a really egregious violation of someone's rights. And that's just another way to think about these things. Excuse me. Certainly helped me to just replace anything the government does with if a human did it. So, Rallo has a charity that really does a great job helping the poor. Is it within his right to go door to door or bust down your door at 4 a.m. and lock you in a cage because you didn't donate to his charity? Of course not. And nobody thinks it is. But when you replace Rallo with government, people somehow miss that clear violation. And that's where the non-aggression principle and understanding that helps you to think through these situations of what is right and wrong, what is acceptable and not acceptable. So that's really the point I wanted to get across today, is that the non-aggression principle is really cool. It's great, but it doesn't hold 100% of the time. And so, Rallo, if you have something more to add on it, speak. Otherwise, Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah, I just want to say that fruit cake is the greatest dessert in the world, and it's called gravy, not sauce.
Both of them were incorrect, and I can now use violence against you for having hurt me and hurt my ears for saying that.
I know you don't. I assume you don't know where that's and what that's in reference to.
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, you should be on.
Wrong.
It's not wrong, but this is why we need a dispute resolution organization to solve these problems, so that one of us can use force against the other one for having horrible opinions, and I would win. But on
you
Twitter,
would win a horrible opinion. I agree.
These are things we talk about on Twitter sometimes, and so you should follow us, because we talk about libertarian stuff, and we go after people who don't like us and that we don't like, but then we also have a lot of fun. So this was kind of the big thing today. I might have lost some of our friends today with these opinions,
including me.
So, yeah. So I mean, if there's anyone else out there who likes fruitcakes, specifically the Klaxon fruitcake, I mean, it's the greatest food in the world. Everyone is wrong but me on this. So,
all right. Well,
Flappy has no response, so obviously I'm right. Anything he's going to say is going to be a logical fallacy.
We'll let the listeners decide. Do you have a free market story for the week?
I do. So this weekend I had to park in a parking garage, privately owned. And so I, drive in, get my ticket, and park in a spot. And I was a little bit early to where I was going, so I went to a local little park place and read a book for a little bit. And then when I was done and had to go to where I was going, I went back into the parking garage to put the book in my car and to go where I was going. And when I went to my car, I noticed there was this big orange sticker on my windshield that said warning. It said parking violation. And the checkbox that was checked off said that I was parked in a private parking spot. And that's when I was kind of looking around and I noticed that there was a sign that said public parking had an arrow. When I was first in the parking garage, I thought that meant additional parking. But in reality, I was in someone's spot. So that's all that I mean, my car didn't get impounded, it didn't get towed away, I didn't get fined. They just put a big, bright sticker on my window that let me know that I was parked in the wrong spot. Now, if you were, parked in a government parking area, like any of the street parking, which is in Philadelphia controlled by the PPA, they would have written you a ticket. You would have gotten fined.
What would happen if you didn't pay the fine?
They would kill you.
That has happened before, by the way, in
Yeah.
case you think we're just being ridiculous.
Well, first they would, send you the letter that says your fine just increased, and then they would, and also in that letter they threaten that you would have a warrant for your arrest, and if you refuse to get arrested, then they'll use force, and that force will be up to and including killing you. But it was just nice. It just showed the difference, and it makes sense because if someone has the right, say they lease that parking spot or own it, they have the expectation that when they go to park that it's going to be available to them. If there's another car that's parked there, I mean, that's not good. So it's perfectly within the owner of the garage's right to let me know I'm in the wrong spot. And when I saw that sign, I did move my car to the public parking area. But it shows the difference. I mean, at the same time, can you imagine if they didn't let me out, or they towed my car because of that, or said, "Oh, hey, now you owe $40 because you parked in the wrong spot, $40 additional dollars." I mean, I guess I would have to pay it because, assuming that it was made known to me that that was the rule of the garage, I guess I would have to pay it.
Or never park there again, I guess.
But that's what I was about to say. I would just never park there again. And instead of talking about how, I just got a warning and they let me to continue to park there without any other issue other than putting something on my windshield that I would be saying, this is the parking garage. You never park there. These people are scumbags, and maybe not scumbags, but not fair, whatever you want to say. But, I have no problem with parking that garage again. I actually appreciate the fact that that's what they did. They gave me a warning, and, I made sure once I realized what was happening, I said, oh yeah, let me get out of this parking spot.
And I'll bet you they took note of your car, wrote down your plates. So if you're doing this every day, they may step up what they're going to do, or talk to you, or not let you park there anymore, or whatever the case is.
Right, which is reasonable, I think. If I parked there every day for weeks straight and I was parking in a spot that was reserved for someone else, I think, and they're continually giving me warnings, I think they'd be justified in maybe moving my car for me.
Certainly.
So it just shows, and it's like anything else. I mean, if you overstay your parking time on a government regulated spot, then they fine you, which is normally at least $30 or something. Whereas any private parking area, garage or parking lot, even if you realize that you stay longer than you originally intended, either you pay when you're leaving, so you pay for as long as you're there, or they charge you a little bit later, but it's all posted. There's no surprises. They say, hey, this is how much it costs for an hour. This is what it costs for 2 hours. This is what it costs for 4 hours. there's no surprises. There's no huge fee that comes out of nowhere. So it's nice.
And the reason why this happens isn't because all the mean people started working for government and just want to harass you, although that may be the case. They just don't have any competition, and you have no choice. You have to park on the streets. You have to use their streets. Whereas the parking garage, there's competing parking garages, and if they're going to be jerks and put a boot on your car and not let you take it, and you have to fight to get it back, well, you're not going to park there, and people aren't really going to want to park there because that's the risk of parking there. So they'll just use a different parking garage. And that's the nice thing about the market compared to a government-run anything, is there's no choice when the government does it. In the market there is, and that keeps the owners accountable.
Absolutely. So with that, again, show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/45. You will find links to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Facebook to talk about fruitcake and gravy, and also like us on Facebook. And finally, give us your email address on the website. There's a few spots where it's pretty obvious. Normally at the end of the articles, we have a little thing that you could submit your email address, and you'll be kept up to date on our posts and other news that might not be available through the other channels. So, and also, as always, give us feedback. Talk to us. We love to hear from you. We love to hear if you agree or disagree with us, and love for you to share our stuff too.
Yeah, tell your friends. If you have anyone who's starting to learn about this libertarian stuff, send them over to this episode, see what they think. I'm sure they have questions too, and maybe you do, and maybe you think we're wrong and you want to tell us about it. So go on our website and tell us, and we'll be happy to respond.
Absolutely. Tell us we're wrong about anything except fruitcake.
Not touching it.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right.
Catch you next week.
Have a good one.